Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Henrik86, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Chris Hillman, NA Literalist, Steve ALM, Maria Neelands, David Robinson, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, Burn Fat Till My Stomach Is As Flat As the Earth, Nathan Thompson, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Missouri Bear, Liam Nedrick, Dank, Erwin Jennisons, Abraham Mohammed, David Rakia Gafford, Naibai, Joshua Balsimo, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, Felix Hung, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Godrockin, Kirsten Smith, Tina Baker, Alexander Main, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thanks to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now, I do believe we have a couple of people in the G Plus panel. Quite a whole bunch of them, in fact. So I'll raise the mic and you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
I think they were just cutting into cigarettes too much.
Jewel had a lot of commercials. Did Jewel?
I don't watch TV, man. I'm clueless on it.
Jewel went all Steve Jobs, didn't they? They were like the owner was like the Steve Jobs of the addictive chemicals industry.
Morning, Nathan.
Morning.
How are you?
Very well.
Right, Nath.
I just heard that Spurs chemo thing with the PhD guy this morning. I was getting a little bit infuriated.
Okay.
Call
Why?
them flat
Spurs did
earthers.
an excellent
Got to
job.
figure them twice as dumb as they are. That's it. That's what Rumpus said. I thought
Nathan,
Spurs
would you
handled
care?
themselves well.
Nathan, would you care to share your offline opinion about chemo, or is that you just be reserved?
Chemo is ace. He did a fantastic job with that.
He's not bad, but
Not bad. On the fly,
People got
he held a
questions,
PhD
you
to
know.
task with the scientific method.
Exactly.
What more do you want?
a lot of people say he's not really flat Earth, and I think he's all right. You know, every time I've talked to him.
Not really flat Earth.
I'm just saying, man. You've heard these rumors. You probably heard it too. But they say that about everyone, to be fair.
Spurs is a good guy, and yeah, his heart's
I
in the right
agree.
place. He's very, very adept with this argument. He knows what he's talking about, and the scientific methods held the guy to task. Yeah, they tried to red herring the crap out of him, ask him to define things that are not what he was asking about, which was specifically about independent and dependent variables for the presumed cause of his effect that he's going to claim he's got science for. And he got very angry because Spurs is exposing this guy as a pseudoscientist. And he doesn't like that. He wants to tell Spurs, like he's told people in the past, that he needs to respect his authority and listen to what he tells him. And Spurs is like, no, you need to prove this with scientific validity. What's your independent variable, mate? And that makes him very angry because he doesn't have that. He's a pseudoscience pretender clown muppet, like Thunderf00t.
That was good
Good
on
morning.
Thunderf00t, by the way. I caught that this morning. Good job. What about that sonic movement that this guy's talking about? That's not an experiment. Drilling holes?
Yeah, his independent variable was drilling holes and stuff. Well, you know, that's your presumed cause that he's going to vary and manipulate to cause a phenomena that doesn't exist. Spurs absolutely hammered that guy. If anybody's unaware of that or thinks differently, they're wrong.
I haven't seen it. Who is he? Who did he debate?
Some random PhD that Fight the Flat Earth dropped on him without any announcement, and then Spurs proceeded to hand him his ass. It was great.
Yeah, and they all kissed his ass. They all kissed that freaking PhD's ass. That's what was burning me up. I thought Spurs was fine. The shit they were saying afterwards was pissing me off.
What would you expect?
Oh, I wouldn't worry about them poisoning the well after he's gone. But after he's really showed up the PhD for not having any scientific evidence, yeah, I'd be really worried about the ad homs after that.
He did good with the Black Swan, too. Did good with that.
So, you all saw my Thunderfoot video then, I take it?
I saw Thunderfoot's video. He sure pulled up a lot of old videos of yours.
Yeah, man. Went back to an interview with Cammy and then strawman me with an interviewee that I'd had on. It's like, all right, so Cammy's opinion's my opinion, is it? Her being interviewed by me makes her opinion mine, does it? Nice strawman.
He didn't like any of your new videos, I don't think.
No, he didn't.
I didn't see any of the new videos.
No, he just went back to old stuff. But that's fine. It doesn't make any difference. I've been saying the same thing for quite a long time. So it really doesn't bother me that he's used old videos. What I do like is when he says, this here bonded ball is like an unbonded gas. Because he's basically a fraud salesman punting nonsense with lies. So rather than actually explaining to people how gas, like the helium he detailed, works, he lied. Either he's completely incompetent or a liar. Let's not just peg him a liar. He might just be really, really stupid. This is Thunderfoot, by the way. Thick as shit. That would be to say that you would tell somebody that gas behaves like a bouncy ball because you need to sell them something. That's gravity. Something he's under the misapprehension is a force because of this Cavendish quote-unquote experiment. Yeah, it's not. That's 105 years out of date. Also, gas doesn't behave like bouncy balls. But if you're a retard or a liar, you'll tell your audience when you're selling them gravity because he's just a salesman, punting lies like all the people he debunks. He's going to make up nonsense about it behaving like a solid. So at a fundamental level, either Thunderfoot thinks gases behave like solids, making him more stupid than a 7-year-old, or he's a liar and a fraud like all the people he debunks. Now, it didn't take much effort to poke this clown, did it? For him to start clowning and lying and being a fraud about his product he's selling. That's gravity. So that he can get around a second law of thermodynamics violation. I also noted that when he's debunking people who are selling products like vacuum chambers, they get a practical demonstration to debunk them, whereas we get wiki parroting and him telling us to imagine that gas is like bouncy balls. Right, clown show, Thunderfoot? No, mate, that's just you being a fraud. Or a retard. You let me know in the comments which it is. Fraud, like the people who claim their products can do things they can't. You know, gas behaving like bouncy balls, fraud. Because he's selling you something, gravity is religion. Or thick as shit. I don't mind which. And it's good fun to laugh at Thunderfoot for being demonstrably stupid. Because he is stupid. He thinks bonded solids behave like gases. Nah, when you're going to make a video about me and talk about helium in it, expect me to show helium. Defying every stupid word you've said.
Good morning.
I would have thanked him for the advertisement.
Oh no, I'll thank him for his stupidity.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can I get a mic check?
Neil check for 10th man. Neil check.
Thank you. I had to turn it on and turn it off. I was going to comment on what the guy said earlier. That rumor that Spurs is truly a baller in disguise. Well,
That's
is a
hysterical
trick.
to me.
Well, hang on. It's
Well, they'll
actually
always
not
say it.
as. Let me finish, please. It's not as clever as they think because see, when they lose to Spurs, their only excuse is he's really a baller, and he didn't really get me.
I said before you joined, actually, 10th, I'm not interested in their race car driver excuses after the fact. Oh, well, the brakes were fading. Oh, well, Spurs is really a baller. Nah. Your man got his ass handed to him and he got really angry about it. It was really funny. Like Thunderf00t saying that gas is like balls.
Well, but that's my point. My point is, if he's really a baller, then his own side gave it to him. And since he's not a baller, then the argument gave it to him. But they can't die to the argument. And, that's the whole point. That guy was resting on his diplomas and his authority. And Spurs said, well, here's a scientific method with no diploma and no authority. And it just kicked his butt all over the place.
Yeah, people need to pay close attention to that. Spurs stuck to the scientific method and handed a PhD his ass. All he did was talk about something we all learned in 5th grade. That's all he did. And he handed the guy his ass. Because the guy's a muppet, a pretender clown, a pseudoscientist who demands that people respect what he says. He's not offering scientific validity, he's just telling you what's what. And when someone says, okay, Mr. Scientist, give me your science, he says, respect my authority! You've got no call to tell me I'm wrong, Mr. Flat Earther.
No, he called him a new name, you buffoon.
No, I learned that the scientific method was developed by Nathan and Sleeping Warrior.
Yes, I quite liked the PhD crediting me with the scientific method. Yeah, another dick move on his part. No, it's just the scientific method, well established, having benefited humanity for quite a long period of time. Definitely not mine and Sleeping Warriors. We just know what it is. You don't.
Well, there you go, challenging them again. There's your first mistake, I guess. They don't want to see that. That's why I don't think they debate.
I don't think it's a challenge. I think it's exposing pseudoscientists when they don't stick to the science. I mean, isn't that what Nathan just did?
QE's advice. Just get them to open their mouth. That's all you got to do. If they've got a heliocentric worldview and think they're a scientist, they are going to embarrass themselves at the hand of flat earthers every single time. This PhD that Spurs handed his ass to, yeah, he was an embarrassment to the globe side. Demand that we respect what you say? No, we'll just laugh at you and your lack of science. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll laugh at you, angry little man. Respect my authority like Cartman.
Interesting that every citation I went to find on the scientific method matched the description QE and you and us give it, but didn't match what this guy said.
One of the things I was thinking about yesterday is I think if we all could at least start agreeing on terms, agreeing on the method, we could get a long way in this discussion. But as soon as we kind of nail down on one side, they have to polarly opposite the other side. So nothing can ever really get done. You know what I mean? So we always kind of talking past each other, not at each other, or not to each other, because we don't have the same definitions. We disagree on what science is. So nothing can ever really truly advance. You know what I mean? Because we never can. It never will.
Paul, you're right. Because if they're pitching pseudoscience, then the terms have to be hijacked and re-modified to fit what they say. But if you go to the terms themselves and get the root words and actually use semantics, the way we communicate, they lose every time because someone is not telling the truth here. And the words expose it. When you go to the words and what the words mean, the words expose who's not telling the truth. When they say it means this, when all citations say otherwise, we know they're the ones who are lying about those words and their meaning.
Yeah, like pseudoscience, very well defined. A claim of science where there has not been an application of the scientific method. That would be pseudoscience. So once you understand what the scientific method involves, and then you see people like Thunderf00t saying, this is science, when they talk about the Boltzmann formula. That's not science, you moron, that's maths. It doesn't have any practical demonstrations or examples. It's just how you calculate and then reify mathematics. And call it science. No. You need to learn the difference between science and maths. as I correctly identified with Thunderf00t, he doesn't know the difference between calculating things and establishing cause and effect with the scientific method. He thinks that maths is science. He literally said the Boltzmann formula is the most important thing in science. It's not science, you complete retard.
The best a formula can do, whatever that formula is describe, right?
Yeah. Maths describes, science explains. Yeah, it's just fairly typical. I think maybe I should be less hard on Thunderf00t. You know, he's subject to the same brainwashing as everybody else, ultimately, isn't he? So when he's typically going to give practical demonstrations and show how people are wrong when they make claims, when it comes to his own religious beliefs and his own claims, he can just use circular reasoning. Well, of course the sky's a vacuum. Look at the sun, it's a burning ball of gas in a vacuum. Now, that's not me assuming that the sky is a vacuum to prove the sky's a vacuum. That's my fundamentalist zealotry coming out in spades. But that's what they do. They point a light in the sky and say that's a burning ball of gas in a vacuum and it's not dispersing. Therefore, what? The natural law that is the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the Earth? Yeah, it does. Entropy's real. Now,
well, that's because they're asserting gravity, right?
Yeah, of course he's asserting gravity. He used 105-year out-of-date rhetoric. He used CV Boy's Reverend John Michel Cavendish gravity to assert that mass attracts mass, and therefore gas would need an escape velocity to overcome this force of gravity. Oh, right. No. That's 105 years out of date. Gravity is not a force. Pseudo-Ramonian force space, bending conceptual mediums of space-time, as described by Einstein in mathematics. Merely a reification fallacy. But Thunderf00t doesn't understand the difference between a mathematical reification and scientific validity. Like I say, he even calls himself a scientist. He's just stupid. He wouldn't know science if it slapped him in the face.
Well, a beaker man would know it and admit it.
Yeah, and a clown would claim the Boltzmann formula is science. Let's just maybe phrase it into a question for anybody who might be watching this after the fact and thinks, no. He's a scientist, man. If he says Boltzmann formula, he must be right. Yeah, we're going to need an independent variable, a dependent variable, and a viable hypothesis for this mathematical graph. That's what we're going to need for it to be scientifically valid, as he claimed, incorrectly. Why bother? Let's not leave it hanging out there. No, you're just a clown. You think maths is science, Thunderf00t. Your Boltzmann graph is just maths, abstractions, not physical. Oh, God, these people are thick. And you don't have to do much. You don't have to poke them very much. I didn't have to go scouring through his videos to find his nonsense. Just had to poke him a couple of times and trim it out from the live show. Next thing you know, he's telling us about how solids are gases to sell his religious belief. What a fraud.
Well, let's use an example to help out. Biology.
You're getting their attention.
Am I not being heard?
Yeah, we hear
you.
We hear you.
Example. Biology is a science because you can determine how things work, how things operate, and a lot of times there's no mathematical formulas at all. Okay, chemistry is the same way. Now, chemistry is maybe a little different though, because you do use formulas to determine ratios and reactions, but you don't necessarily need a formula to describe what a reaction is doing or what's happening or how this chemical is reacting with that chemical. You just can see it, test it, and know it. Maybe use mathematics to describe it. So if math is science, why is there no mathematical formula in biology, but there is in chemistry? But there's also, at times, there's not mathematical formulas in chemistry. Do you understand why I'm drawing that analogy, what I'm doing? You get what I'm saying?
I do understand. What you're saying is, why would you have mathematical formulas to calculate how much there is something happening? Well, calculating how much of something is maths. Perfectly acceptable to qualify how much something has happened. But explaining why it happened would be to establish the cause of an effect. That's science. Now, an establishment of an independent variable, that would be something you think causes the effect, yet to be varied or manipulated to cause the effect. Well, that doesn't require any qualification in mathematics. You've got a presumed cause which you're going to vary to see if it causes an effect. You don't need to qualify how much the effect happens. It's not relevant to whether or not your presumed cause caused it or not. Now, what we're talking about when I detail establishing independent variable, that would be presumed cause, dependent variable, that would be naturally occurring phenomena, and control variables, that which you will hold constant to not skew your test, that's science. And again, Thunderf00t thinks that because he's watched the sun a lot, or looked at Jupiter, that he's doing science. He literally called astronomy science. No. You want to give me an independent variable for any of the phenomena you observe? Have you varied and manipulated that which caused the effects you observed? No! At best, you can adhere to step 1. Observe natural phenomena, your little lights in the sky. But from there, you're going to make up a little story about them being gas giants in vacuums without any validity being offered, without any hypothesis being formulated, and without the most important bit of science. Not the Boltzmann formula, as you believe. Not the maths that isn't science. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is experimentation, Thunderf00t. Let's just repeat that, because Thunderf00t's thick. He thinks a mathematical graph is the most important thing in a method used to establish cause. No, experimentation. That would be the actualization of hypotheses. Actualization of your assumption to see if it's actually true or not. Now that's science. Not maths, not the Boltzmann formula. You bloody mathematician posing fraudulently as a scientist. I'm going to need where he got his PhD, so I can let them know that to lie to an audience about his religious beliefs, he's told them gas behaves like solids. He needs to be stripped of his accreditation. He's a retard. Thunderf00t, we're going to need to know where you got your PhD and what it's in, because it's in something that you're claiming is science, and then you're going on to describe gas as a solid. What a moron. How thick have you got to be educated by flat earthers in what science is? Now, meanwhile, he starts out his video about me ad homing the crap out of me, another logical fallacy employed by morons. Don't attack the argument, attack the man. And how much he earns on Patreon, because that's relevant to a demonstration that violates natural law, isn't it, Thunderf00t? Now, that would be a logical fallacy you've employed. Yeah, look it up. Ad hominem attack. Not addressing the argument, addressing the man. He then goes on to qualify how smart he is, because of how much he's looked through a telescope at. Yeah, so you've observed a lot of phenomena. Almost sounds like science, Thunderf00t. You're going to need to establish cause with a hypothesis and systematic experimentation to validate your presumed cause. To actually call it science, though. And if you haven't got that, that makes what you talk about pseudoscience. Because you're claiming it's science and it isn't. That's defined also. Pseudo-scientist. That's what Thunderf00t is. Now, he doesn't know who he's messing with. He thinks we're thick because we're flat earthers. And he's been trained like a good little dog to automatically ridicule people who say the earth is flat, and then declare that gas behaves like solids. Because he's under the religious aspirations of globe earth, and they take over and make people sound stupid. But they feel it's necessary to say that their opponent's stupid automatically when they declare that gas behaves like a bloody bouncy ball. Gas is like this solid thing. Yeah, if you're going to do that, don't mention helium in your video, because I'll completely humiliate you by showing what helium does. It doesn't fall down, go boom boom with a single vector, as asserted with gravity. Oh, that would be net force 0, according to the bullshit we have. Net force 0, right? No, not a force. But you're going to tell me you release stuff having detailed what helium is, and your claim that you've done spectroscopy by looking through masses and masses of different materials? Yeah, you clearly didn't know us very well. We've got a PhD spectroscopy expert on our Ballbusters panel who details how spectroscopy works and what a complete sham stellar spectroscopy is. Now, given that particular ballbuster, that would be Dr. John D, PhD, spectroscopy, has exposed the complete clown fraudery that is a claim of a gas giant being the sun, because it's not in any way scientific, not in any way controlled. Looking through everything else. Real spectroscopy has controlled circumstances when they study. Now, you can't do that with stellar spectroscopy. It's an absolute joke. But you need that sham to affirm your religious belief in gravity and sky vacuums and helium-based suns. Well, unfortunately, you're tangling with people who do understand what science is and will expose you as a complete clown when you declare that looking at lights is science and bouncy balls are gas. No, mate, it will just show what helium does and laugh at you for being a complete moron. So Thunderf00t, I'm telling you how stupid you are. We're laughing at you, bouncy balls of gas. You learn what an intermolecular bond is, you complete retard.
I think it's interesting. On Discord yesterday, Rumpus was talking about gas particles moving at 2,000 miles an hour. I'm going like, when you start equating balls of gas or gas molecules with any kind of other regular ball, tell me where I've seen 2,000 miles an hour regular balls moving anywhere in nature. Does anyone ever see that? I've never seen balls moving like a bouncy ball, baseball, other whatever they equate it to, moving at 2,000 miles an hour. Anybody ever seen that?
No, gas doesn't behave like solids. They're totally different states. So to assert that gas behaves like a bouncy ball you've dropped in a tank that's empty, and that's analogous to gas that we have in our atmosphere, oxymoron number 2, atmo, air, sphere, shape. No, gas doesn't have a shape, it takes the shape of its container. He also talked about the force you exert over an area. Per unit area. Area of what exactly? Oh, that would be the area of a container. But of course, while he's showing Earth in CGI rendered form violating natural law, he also says it's really easy to show atmosphere without a container. Oh, well, you're not showing that. You're showing a violation of natural law in CGI form. People are retards. But yet they think they're scientists. It's an absolute joke. It's an embarrassment, in fact. Call yourself a scientist. Do some science.
The pseudoscience community has been insulated for years and years until the Flat Earth group came along and said, wait a minute, we're going to hold you to task on everything you've ever said, and we're going to use the Socratic method, and words do mean things. And the minute you do that, all the big boys, I'll never talk to a flat earther, they're below me. And then all the little boys, they think, well, I'll just get on the show and show those flat earthers something. And then they get walloped by their own science that they've changed into pseudoscience, and they have no idea what's happening because they've bought the paper mache lie.
Yep. As I said earlier, people like Thunderf00t will go to the nth degree to debunk somebody who's made a claim. But yet when it comes to their religious belief, they'll tell you to use your imagination as they lie to you about gas behaviour. Because they're just salesmen. They're selling their religion. They're like Jehovah's Witnesses. They're going to knock on the doors, and he's got 100,000 doors to knock on, his audience, to lie to them about what gas behaviour is. Lie to them about what science is. Just lie to them. I mean, I said this right at the start. Maybe it's not lies. Maybe it's total and utter incompetence. Who knows?
It's the they. It's what we've talked about who they are. They is everyone perpetuating someone's initial first lie.
How can you have gas pressure without a container? Well, look at that light over there. That right there that's gas pressure without a container, because I say so. And that proves that we can have gas pressure around a sphere Earth without containment in a 10 to the minus 17 Torr vacuum in violation of natural law. because I think that light in the sky is a violation of that natural law, and that proves it. That's not circular reasoning. It's not begging the question.
How does he know that the sun is gas anyway?
Oh, because he used. Oh, I'll tell you. He used stellar spectroscopy. Stellar spectroscopy told him it was helium. He wasn't looking through a vast amount of space according to his own rhetoric. No, he wasn't looking through that. It was all nice and controlled. He got the sun in a nice little chamber and isolated it to establish exactly what it was. That's what he did, to know that the sun is helium, a gas that expands in all directions, not just down, in accordance with gas law. But of course, he thinks that gas goes down, go boom boom, with 105-year out-of-date mass attracting mass, by way of an experiment that has no natural phenomena or independent variable, and the parameters within the quote-unquote experiment are mass, which is undefined. But there we go, that's what you get if you're a religious fundamentalist, religious sphere-believing zealot like Thunderf00t. You end up lying to people about what gas does, to punt your religion. Good news, he's out there debunking people who are smashing iPhones. We're debunking people who lie to you about the nature of reality. People like Thunderf00t, who lie to you about how gas behaves, so he can have his sky vacuum.
Well, I think you tore him apart without going into the violation of the Sachs law of thermodynamics.
Right on.
Yeah, I think you destroyed him.
I'm going to keep highlighting it. Man with
Please
100,000, almost 100,000 subscribers thinks he can laugh at me and then demonstrate his abject stupidity. Oh, I'll labour the point, all right. I'll labour just how thick Thunderf00t is for a prolonged period and have a good laugh at his expense while I'm doing it, and point out just how stupid he is with actual examples of how stupid he is. That's what I'll do. Not repeat my question, how do you have gas pressure without a container, and then point at the sky and claim that the lights in it are proving that? No, that's just retarded.
Yeah, I just kept saying, oh, really? To everything you presented, I was like, oh, really?
What do you call it when you're pointing at what you're trying to prove and saying that's proof? What do you call that?
It's begging the question.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, Paul Hall, Chocolate Sane, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's it?
Hello.
Hello, hello. And Armin as well. Hello, Armin.
Oh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Any signs of a physical, geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature?
Not from Mount
No
Rushmore.
chance.
Not from Mount Rushmore?
Nope.
Hey,
I want to
getting
set
in
a precedent.
special audio advertisement for
I want to set
audio
a
software.
precedent.
Sorry.
Sorry, what about the president?
Not from Mount Rushmore. I'm setting a precedent.
You're setting a precedent. Boom, boom.
I don't know. I'm going to ask Thunderf00t that question.
What, any evidence of a physical, geometric sphere-edge horizon formerly known as Earth curve?
Yes, I'm going to ask him that question.
Well, it depends. He might just turn tail, cut his losses. That would be a very sensible thing to do. However, if he continues to engage with us, he may learn about the reification fallacy that is geometric sphere Earth mathematics, and how they've been debunked by the Black Swan.
Well, he likes math, so I figured that's going to be one he's going to jump right in on.
Yeah. Well, as I said in the pre-show, we've got to take every opportunity during this show to have a damn good laugh at how stupid Thunderf00t is. Now, given that he hasn't actually commented on the geometric sphere-edge horizon, he did mention the transit of Venus, though. Now, that's utilised by way of Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion, and an assumption that Venus has the same R value as Earth. The assumed value we debunked with the Black Swan, as I mentioned earlier. Well, Christian Huygens assumed that Venus, that light in the sky, had the same radius value as Earth. Wouldn't you know? Just an assumption. Same as the assumption that Earth has a radius value. Unfortunately, though, that's been debunked. We do not see the geometric horizon, even though it used to block boats and buildings. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No, our census would tell us if the Earth-based variety rotation was happening. Just like it tells us when we're in a car or on an airplane or on a train or anything that's moving, we would know.
We'd also observe Coriolis effect. That would be to say
True.
that if you were watching an aeroplane from the ground, Coriolis effect, which is suggested Earth has because it's supposed to be spinning, would suggest that you would watch that plane seem to take a curved path because you're spinning underneath it as per Coriolis effect. Now, if you're observing a plane seem to take a curved path because you're spinning underneath the plane, then Earth is spinning underneath the plane, and that would shorten flight times when travelling west, and you'd be fighting against Earth turn when travelling east. Of course, no flight time has ever been affected ever by Earth turn, because Earth is not turning underneath planes. But that's the assertion, that we observe Coriolis drift because we are stood on a claim to be spinning Earth. Therefore, things that are not attached seem to drift, like aeroplanes, helicopters, drones, balloons. However, we don't observe anything ever drifting ever. You don't launch a drone and watch it drift away from you because Earth's spinning underneath it. That doesn't happen.
Okay, Nathan.
Emo video, they use the what do you call it? The thing that Bob used. What was that called again?
Oh, the fibre optic
Shot.
gyro. Yeah, exactly. If Earth turns underneath a fibre optic gyro at 15 degrees an hour, then it also turns underneath the aeroplane, so you can see the not actual deflection in the aeroplane. See, it seemed to curve, even though it's not. It's actually travelling straight, with Earth turning underneath it, and you observing it seemed to drift. Well, that would mean Earth's turning underneath it now, wouldn't it, Neil? At 15 degrees an hour?
Yeah, of course. That's what they said.
No evidence from Melbourne, says Leonard J. Thank you very much for the super chat.
Nathan, can I screw that up for you for a second?
Screw what up?
What if the Earth wasn't turning, but what if the space in which the Earth was the thing that's actually turning in relation to the space outside of it, so that the space would be turning with the Earth within and not the actual Earth, so that there would be no momentum issues?
Well, Arwen, there's a hole in that question already.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, because you're saying the space next to the space. And so how is the atmosphere not escaping into that other space?
And also, does this yield a Coriolis effect as it's claimed Earth does?
Well, the stars would be the Coriolis effect then.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but
So no
you're
15-degree deviation in a gyroscope, no planes drifting because you're rotating it. So no Coriolis effect then.
Well, because the Earth itself would not be rotating, but the space in which the Earth was would be in relation to the space outside of it.
So
Right,
how
but-
come the gas pressure stays in the first place?
Yeah. Before we get on to the
That's
second
not,
law,
we
hold
were
on.
talking about turning.
No. So, given that would be the example, then how would you explain Neil deGrasse Tyson's example? So, a ball is kicked, according to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and from the stand, you see it seem to curve. Like my example with the aeroplane, just with a ball leaving the ground rather than an aeroplane leaving the ground. He says it seems to curve from the stands and go through the goal because Earth turned underneath it. But your example wouldn't yield that effect, would it, Arwin?
He just doesn't understand. He's basing that on faulty old assumptions, just like all those weirdo gravity believers still think Newtonian gravity works and all that. He's still operating on the old ways.
Oh, the old believing in a globe Earth ways, where globe Earth gives you Coriolis effect. Yeah, he believes in that nonsense. It's not demonstrable in anything beyond his football example, but there we go. Shout out to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Shout out to Al Junkie, who says, 9 miles visible from 1 Thunderf00t height. Hashtag Mifa. Also, shout out to Rakia Life. I have never seen or felt Earth spinning underneath me. How do I feel this? Thanks for the super chat, everyone. Any scientific
So
evidence?
I play.
Go on.
Hold on, I got a question. I play a lot of sports, so every time I throw a baseball straight, shouldn't it be curving?
From the stand, once
If
you
I'm on a
release the
spinning
ball,
Earth.
once you release the ball, it would be claimed that if you're watching that ball and you've thrown it perfectly straight, from the stands it looks like it's going to take a small curved trajectory. It doesn't really curve, it just looks like it from the stands, because from the stands you're turning underneath the ball in a different reference frame, with the ball not attached, travelling straight but seeming to curve, because you're claimed to rotate underneath it.
That never happened.
Neil, that was a very
by
bad
that-
example.
Hey,
By
Chocolate.
that logic, you would never have to throw a curveball because every ball you throw straight
That's
would
what I
end
was
up
thinking.
apparently curving.
Except if you
That's what I was
throw it
thinking.
from the other direction, though. Then you have to throw a double.
So the
Double
best curveball pitcher was actually applying Coriolis.
No.
I love you. I love you, Neil.
No, stop. Right, no. The ball and what it does is kind of irrelevant. It's what you observe of the ball that is Coriolis. So watching the ball seem to curve because you've thrown it off a roundabout, for example. So you're spinning on a roundabout, you're holding a ball and you throw it. And you go, oh, look at that. It looks like it's curving away from me. Well, it's not. It's you spinning underneath. And the same is said to be happening on Earth. Because they claim it spins. So you look up at the plane, it's not attached to Earth. And you go, oh, look at that, it looks like it's curving. And the guy next to you says, it's not really curving. That's just an apparent deflection. That's Coriolis effect. The reason we observe the aeroplane seem to curve is because the Earth's turning underneath the plane. And that would shorten flight times when travelling west. Because if Earth's turning underneath the plane, Earth's turning underneath the plane for us to see Coriolis effect. And not actual deflection because Earth's turning underneath it, according to the claim of a spinning ball Earth. Obviously, no flight times are ever reduced travelling west. The ground doesn't come towards you if you fly. If you hover in a helicopter, a continent doesn't just make its way to you while you hover. It's preposterous. There are no examples of Earth turning underneath anything ever, beyond these nonsense assertions like Neil deGrasse Tyson makes with a ball that's in the air for a split second.
Nathan, may I put a caveat here? They want us to admit, like they say, that we see a Coriolis effect. But when we ask for a physical geometric horizon, they say they can't see that one, though.
Yeah, we have a constant battle with people asserting by the high priesthood of heliocentrism that we should, for example, see Earth curve. And here's the geometry to measure it. And then we point out that you can't measure a geometric sphere edge horizon. And they tell us, that's correct, we can't see it, it only exists in maths. And that's justified by them. Like it's reasonable to say, no, we can't see Earth curve. It only exists in maths, but it's perfectly acceptable to reify that geometry that's hijacked perspective and put it in Muppet vision, otherwise known as orthographic view, and use whole numbers for the feet and inches or meters value of something you're looking at, which won't change with distance, won't change angular size. Therefore, if something disappears from bottom up, they'll ask you how many feet and inches have gone, a size that doesn't change with distance, so that they can take the effect of perspective, that'll be angular size relationships, and call it Earth curve. Even though you can't see a geometric horizon, we can't see it, we can't measure it, and yet Al-Biruni's claimed to have measured it now, isn't he? And when we put that to them, they say, well, he was trying to measure it. He came within 5% of a point that you can't see and can't measure, don't you know?
Al-Biruni's failure.
I just realized something, guys. I played baseball all those years, and really every time I seemed like that ball was deviating, it was actually what I was not hitting was a fastball. So, I don't know if you got my pun, but it's deviating, truly deviating. Oh, wait. I'll dismiss myself now.
It would have been great if Neil hadn't made that joke 4 minutes ago.
I was
trying to get in. I was trying to get in to do this.
Oh my god.
Well, that sucks if you're the hitter, right? And you're the hitter that's standing on the non-inertial reference frame, and now you got a ball coming at you, appearing to deviate, and now you got to hit it.
There's a way to rephrase this, right?
It's only if home plate is facing north to south.
You couldn't throw a fastball if Earth was rotating underneath. That's the bottom line. So you couldn't throw it straight, because no matter what you did, the ground turns underneath it, according to their rhetoric, giving you Coriolis deflection from the stands watching the ball. Well, that means you can't throw it straight. It will always deflect from your vantage point watching it whilst attached to the ground. You can't throw a straight ball.
Tested. I want a very, very large stadium-sized platform with football players on it, and that whole stadium rotating, and let's see what happens.
Well, actually, if it's east to west, it would be a ball would be sinking. It would have to remember. I think that's what they said. The bullet will tend to want to drop on if you go in one direction. If it's going to the other direction, want to rise. So if it's east to west, it would be rising or sinking.
Well, there's your sinker ball.
There you go. Exactly.
Quick couple of shout outs. So shout out to Unitox Femu. He says, excuse me, what people believed between Biruni year 1000 and Galileo year 1500. Then Columbus took all Al-Biruni's books and studies and went to the adventure. Well, thank you very much for the super chat, Unitox Femu. Also, Al Junkie again, thank you very much for the super chat. A swerving ball proves Coriolis. Hashtag swerve ball. Swervature, sorry. Thank you for the super chat.
Swervature.
Swervature.
That's good.
Are we done with this? Go on. Who was that in Discord? Neil. Neil, you're just causing background noise. Can you pop yourself on mute?
Sorry.
That's okay. Right, let's move on. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container for the gas to press upon?
Gravity barrier. Gravity barrier.
What now?
Well, what did Thunderfoot say? What did Thunderfoot say about gas pressure?
Oh,
Wait, this guy really calls himself Thunderfoot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shocking.
So Thunderfoot decided to just we haven't quite made up our mind yet, either he's completely incompetent or a fraud globe salesman. We haven't quite decided yet. But ultimately, he decided to describe gas as behaving like bouncy balls, which are solid, even after detailing what helium was and how we'd named it, based on, according to him, stellar spectroscopy, debunked by PhD spectroscopy expert. That would be our very own John, Dr. John D. So
did he use the mostly down argument?
Say again, sorry. Mostly down.
Did he use the mostly down argument?
Yeah. Well, no. He doesn't understand that gases have intermolecular bonds, and thought that he could equivocate them with a solid. That would be a bouncy ball to get it to behave in the way he wants, so you can have gas here.
Right. It
Rakia
just
Life
reminds
says,
me of the time of Rumpus when he did that.
just 1 second. So Rakia Life says, "Why did you deviate from my last super chat? Was it that bad of a turn of events?" No, I just couldn't read it. It was off the screen. I've adjusted my I've adjusted my screen sizes so I can read your chats properly now. Sorry, I didn't mean to misread it. It just fell off the screen. Thank you for the super chat, Rakia Life. Really appreciate the paying me for a correction. Moving on. Do we have any evidence of gas pressure without a container beyond utilising the idea that a gas behaves like a solid, as Thunderf00t did?
Gravity barrier. Gravity barrier.
Gravity's not a force. You can think of it as a force, but that would be
I
the
know.
definition.
People say that the gas itself is holding itself nowadays.
I know. But in this case, the gravity would be the effect of something else that is still keeping the gas inside.
Gas pressure is the force over an area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're going to need an area.
All right, it's basically saying, okay, there is some kind of energy field or whatever, and I'm just saying it's gravity.
I see. You're just making shit up.
That's what they do.
Yeah, they do. But they also just talk complete nonsense, as I keep pointing out. You know, if you can't have gas behaving in a manner that would be conducive with a ball earth in a vacuum, just describe it as behaving like a solid. Because you've got to punt your religion, right?
But that's a step too far for me.
Well, it's just downright stupid. It's just downright idiotic. You know, the people who would say such nonsense, people like Thunderf00t, are just complete clowns. Just idiots. You know, gas is unbonded, solids are bonded. They're fundamentally different. You were taught this very early on in your schooling. But, you know, these kind of people who would use a false analogy and describe gases as being like solids, they also call themselves scientists.
Nathan, I had this discussion the other day with two gentlemen on my property about gas pressure without a container. And they were tracking with me, and then they said, okay, hang on, what about this? And they proposed that there are different gases in the vacuum of space than the gases that we deal with here on Earth. So maybe they behave differently and they can stick together. So then I said to them, so what you're saying is gas behavior is different in a place that doesn't exist because you're assuming space? And they said, well, hang on, let me finish the story. So then I said, what happens here when you put gas in a vacuum, when you introduce with an opening of a valve into a vacuum, what happens to that gas? I go, it fills the available space, right? I go, so why isn't that not happening with Earth in next to that space? How come our gas isn't escaping, let alone the gas you think is different somewhere else, which you wouldn't know because it's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics, and that kind of took care of it.
Yeah, Thunderf00t took a similar approach, so he begged the question and said, well, basically, I believe that the CERN and Jupiter are also standing in violation of the second law of thermodynamics. Therefore, I've proven that you can violate the second law of thermodynamics and we can have gas pressure without a container here, because I believe that light in the sky violates that very natural law, never to be violated, inviolable, applicable always.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm first. Then you.
Hold on, Neil. Go ahead, Darwin.
Go ahead, Owen.
Right, no, what I got. Come on, Neil. What I got hung up on is that somebody's claiming, gas. Now, maybe the gas works differently in another region. So he was basically saying, so the gas basically isn't gas anymore then. That's what I got out of that.
Yeah, he's saying gas doesn't behave like gas. You know, gas law, it doesn't behave like that. Second law of thermodynamics, it doesn't apply to gas. Because gas is behaving like solid.
It's that new power level of gas, like super gas or something.
I think that's called plasma.
Super bonded gas, otherwise known as a solid. Yeah, I mean, like
This may not be good, but it's a trans
Okay, back to
gas
Neil.
particle.
Oh, Neil's turn now.
Go on, Neil. You've waited
I just
long enough.
wanted to say, the other day you were talking about how if you bring a normie in, they'll start to short circuit. I've seen that happening to my son. I've had him with me the past few days, and I see him just short circuiting. It's actually really funny.
Talking of your son. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
That's actually what he asked me yesterday.
I never hear them defend this. Out of all the arguments, this is the one they don't want to touch. I don't know what it is about it. None of them have the math. They don't have anything for this.
Oh, they do. Kepler's third law of
Well, I never
interplanetary.
hear them debate it.
Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion. Now, in order to apply that, you need a scalar. You need to know how big one of the lights in the sky is. Well, they use Venus. For the transit of Venus. That's what they're going to utilise in this example. And what they're going to do to attain this mathematics is assume that Venus has the same radius as Earth. And Earth's radius, which has been debunked by the Black Swan, is also assumed. So we've got Earth assumed to be a sphere with an assumed radius value, and then Christian Huygens assuming that Venus is the exact same size as the presupposition that Earth is a sphere. So the twinkly light called Venus is assumed to be the same size as Earth. That's why it's called Earth's twin. Not for any other reason that Christian Huygens arbitrarily assigned our R value, that was a presupposition to begin with, to that light in the sky, so he could apply Kepler's third law. So they do have the maths
So
for
it's
it.
not science.
It just requires a
It's not
lot of
science.
assumptions about the R value, which we've debunked.
And that's why they don't debate it, because they don't want to debate all those assumptions that even in their model they have to make.
Yeah, it's
So
very
there
quick
would
to
be
say.
Because it makes
Assumptions
them
if
feel a
measure
little
it-
silly.
Shadows.
Because we've got a very quick route to the origin of the assumption when it comes to Venus. So how do we know Venus is the same size as Earth? Well, Christian Huygens assumed it. So that's the end of that argument.
So it's not science, right?
No, it's just an assumption by Christian Huygens that a light in the sky is not only spherical, but has the same radius value as a presupposed radius value for Earth as a sphere in a vacuum.
Hey Nathan,
So
has
what about
anybody
shadows?
ever in
Somebody
NASA?
asked me
Sorry,
about- I give up.
has
One at a
anybody in
time.
NASA ever then proceeded to say, "Yeah, we actually proved that Venus is the same size with our satellite photos, comparing it to Earth's satellite
I could
photos"?
kiss you. That's
Did anybody
excellent,
ever
Owen.
say
Why,
that?
why would they? Why would
Hold on,
they need to?
chocolate.
The like.
Hold on, chocolate.
Yeah, yeah.
could
Excellent.
have.
I could kiss you, Owen. Brilliant. Oh, so they might claim that they've now taken measurements. Where would the satellites that might be claimed to have taken this measurement? Where would they be? Where would they be operating exactly?
Next
You didn't go high
question.
enough.
please.
Not next question. Play along, Owen. Come on, don't be like that. For the audience's benefit, when Arwin puts something preposterous that's clearly a ball-tard claim, right? When I actually want him to go through the bit where he loses, he doesn't like doing it, even as a pretend ball-tard. He won't. He doesn't want to do it now, does he? Clearly. Come
I'm
on,
a very
play along.
serious actor.
Come on, play along.
It's when you do the high pitched. Where are those satellites supposed
Let's try
to be
again. Let's see if it works even
He
higher.
doesn't like it.
Let's just try it once more. Arwin, so where are those satellites operating again?
There's one other. Don't forget, there's one other way to figure out
Very
the distance to the
high up
sun.
in the gradient.
No, they claim to be in a sky vacuum in violation of natural law now, aren't they?
You taking piss on me,
Very,
Nathan?
very thin air.
No.
You
I don't.
idiot!
Not at all.
I said the other way that they have to do the distance to the sun is you have to know the distance to the moon, and you have to measure the sun at the solstice over the horizon. Think about that one for a second. That's the other way to measure the distance to the sun. There's two assumptions in there, two problems in there, so you guys can figure out.
Wait! Don't you need a radius for all of that?
Yeah, you do, yeah. Black Swan, baby.
Shucks.
Yeah, that does suck.
But you got to know, how do you verify the distance to the moon? And also, how do you know that the moon is disorbiting the Earth? And also, isn't the horizon refracted? There's all kinds of problems with that one.
Yeah, there's all kinds of problems, but the main one being, how do you know you're experiencing an orbit or an orbital path of the moon? Well, that's just a begging the question fallacy, isn't it? I know it's falling around Earth as a sphere. Oh, right, that's just an assumption of your outcome, though, isn't it? Orbits is a begging the question fallacy. As soon as you hear the word orbit, you say you're begging the question, because they are.
Yeah, what's an orbit?
What's an orbit again? Oh, a presupposed trajectory around a sphere, Earth in a vacuum? That sounds pretty much like you're assuming your outcome there, my friend, with the word orbit.
Yep.
Moving on. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth? Kiwi Forever. Did you want to... Was it Kiwi Forever? Can't read, it's too small. Kiwi Farmer.
Hello, Nathan.
Oh, just
PhD Tony.
thought you'd introduce a whole load of background noise while I was talking. Thank you for that. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics? Don't all go at once.
No. I thought Discord
Tumbleweed
was going
sound.
to pipe in, but they weren't. So
So if you are, by any chance, like, I don't know, Thunderf00t, Becky, people like that, and you are under the misapprehension that you're doing science, all you need to do is provide us with a viable hypothesis to defend this next statement. Astrophysics, pseudoscience. Astronomy, pseudoscience. Cosmology, pseudoscience. Now, the only way you can disprove that is by giving us a viable hypothesis. That's it. That's all you got to do. Right, I'm going to shout out a couple of super chats. Sorry, whoever was about to start. DJ Neo Shaman, thank you very much. I disliked Thunderf00t's video. Good deed done for the day. Hashtag. Thank you. Next. Very good. Thank you very much indeed for the support, DJ Neo Shaman. Also, Godzilla37. Pride is the atheist's poison. Yeah, I agree. That's a very good statement, Godzilla. His video response to me was very prideful. And Quantum Eraser also said exactly the same thing. So yeah, I completely agree. Flat Earth is the cure. Unfortunately, the poison is easier to take. I like that. That's the best super chat of the day so far, Godzilla. Thank you very much indeed.
So Nathan, you said something about cosmology and all that. So the reason it's not science is because the only thing they have in this observation, they can't go any further, correct?
I meant astrophysics rather than cosmology, but there we go.
Okay.
Yes, you're right.
What were the three?
Cosmology, astrophysics, and astronomy.
Right. So a dependent variable, the effect, or some observance of an effect. And after that, what can they do?
Nothing. That's it.
Just wait longer.
Yeah, maybe claim that time is the independent variable. You know, use a concept where you don't have anything to actually vary and manipulate to cause the effect you're observing and validate it scientifically. They don't have that. They just have step one, observe natural phenomena. Sometimes they don't even have that. They just make something up without anything.
So how do they know the sun is a gas?
They claim stellar spectroscopy. Hey, Sleeping Warrior.
Hey.
Hey, Tony.
Yeah, Owen.
What's up?
Riley, what up, man?
Did we...
Because I was just going to make a shout out because I saw your video about Spurs and Spurs destroying that PhD.
He did really well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Before we get into this, did we get through all the housekeeping questions? I lost track.
Wait,
I think we did, yeah.
we left off at gas pressure without a container.
No, we
I think
definitely had that. No, I think we concluded it. Yeah, perfect. We've concluded the housekeeping. Wonderful. Yeah, we need to take a few moments. Let's have an uninterrupted air. We need to take a few moments to praise Spurs. Because Spurs did fantastically for one reason. He stuck to the scientific method. And as a direct consequence, he handed a PhD his ass and got the guy very, very riled while he told him, like Eric Cartman in South Park, "Respect my authority! I have PhD! You listen to what I tell you!"
The other good thing about it was, even with an attempt from Fight the Flat Earth to derail him with a sideswipe, which was something to do with, do you know the difference between acceleration and velocity, or something along them lines? Spurs identified that it was a sideswipe, brought it back on track, and asked him again, "How did you manipulate it?" And he lost his marbles. Well, they know that the guys know that they can't manipulate gravity, right? Even if they do think it's a force. So aside from the fact that it's the old science, it's not the current physics, he knows he can't manipulate it, and Spurs is bang on point. It's almost as if the guy was saying, "Who do you think you are knowing this information? That information is restricted only for us scientists."
Yeah, that was the best part. How triggered he got. How dare you question my authority in science? When he's directly asking him about scientific method, and he can't respond, and the dude is getting pissed. It was great. And Fight the Flat Earth. Well, first of all, why does a PhD need fight the tight shirt to jump in for him? Are you kidding? Against a regular guy like Spurs? That's pathetic.
He must have been
Not
around
the best
a
is
while.
how Spurs kept saying, "Sir."
Yeah, Spurs kept it nice, very cordial, and at the same time handed this guy his ass.
You're the professor. I'm the student. I'm just asking questions.
I think that's defined as having an ass on a silver plate.
Hold on. So what do we want to add something from Discord? Didn't see you flashed.
I just said, "Sir." He just kept saying, "Sir." Sort of like mocking him to me.
Yeah, Spurs has got that kind of tone, but I don't think he was actually saying it to mock him. I think he was actually genuinely being respectful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he just wanted to know. I just want to know what you manipulated, sir. I'm just asking questions. I'm just a student.
I'm just asking
No,
you to
I
give
think
us...
Chemo is definitely trying to get under his skin a bit.
Yeah,
because I think
definitely.
He doesn't like the
He didn't
false
have to
sense of
try.
authority.
That's the
guy doesn't
beautiful
even know
part.
what
He
he's
didn't
saying.
have to try. Just asking us a quote unquote scientist about his scientific method pissed him off.
He hasn't got any.
Beautiful.
That's why. He hasn't got any.
I tell you what's been an unexpected side event. I think it seems to be directly linked, and I'm not sure that it is, but it seems to be. But Fight the Flat Earth wanted me to go onto his show today, and I said I'm not going on your show because basically I don't agree with all the money that's going around at the minute. People are doing weird things, and it seems to be all stemming from money, and I'm not going to encourage it. I don't agree with your demeanor. I don't agree with the way you belittle people. Blah blah blah. He called me a hypocrite. I called him an idiot, and that was kind of it. But I said, I'll go on your show if you don't monetize the video, leave it as demonetized, and then there's no financial reason for you to do anything other than talk science. And he agreed. So tonight at 9 p.m. British summertime, I'll be broadcasting my side, he'll be broadcasting his side. But Fight the Flat Earth's going to be trying to argue that gravity is something. Now, I'm not quite sure what he's going to be arguing. He wouldn't give me his advanced disclosure. But it's going to be interesting because there's been a bit of a background to this. About 12 months ago, we had a back and forth, and Fight the Flat Earth lost. And in that losing period, it caused him to go and get a PhD current physicist called George Musa, because I was saying that gravity is not a force. And he went and got George Musa. And in contrast to the PhD that Spurs came up against last night, George Musa was extremely professional, extremely polite, and disagreed with Craig by saying that gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. He also said some other phrase, which I'm sure Chocolate will be able to recite verbatim perfectly. But the point was that he was extremely polite. Now, when he didn't agree with Craig, Craig thinks that he actually agreed with him. Craig doesn't realize the guy was being professional and disagreeing with him properly. Craig thinks that gravity is a force and has continued telling people to this day that gravity is a force. But I heard the Spurs conversation with Fight the Flat Earth recently, and he now seems to be conflating the Einsteinian model of gravitation with the Newtonian model of gravitation. He seems to be saying that they're the same thing. So if that's the angle he's now going to be going with, it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be a bloodbath, and it's going to be Fight the Flat Earth blood all over the floor. So make sure you tune in for that at 9 o'clock tonight.
We can?
Fight
We
the Flat
do.
Earth is the
We
only.
must.
He's the only streamer I know of that doesn't use Discord. Because he challenges all these Flat Earthers, but he just doesn't use Discord. I don't know what it.
So, Chocolate, what's not on the really is level?
Yeah, come on, Chocolate. You missed your calling.
We can, we do, we must consider Newtonian gravity as a force. Doesn't mean it really is one, but we don't necessarily have to work at the really is level. George Mooser, 2019.
Now, obviously, this was on the back of a Sleeping Warrior week where he spent I didn't watch any of them, if I'm honest, but he spent the week ridiculing me. I don't know how he got a week's worth of content out of that. He did well for the whole week, but nonetheless, he's obviously butthurt because his favourite topic, gravity, isn't what he thinks it is, and he doesn't accept that everybody else in current physics doesn't agree with him. So obviously, tonight we're going to be having a conversation, and I'm curious as to which way he's going to take this because, well, gravity's quite kind of important on their model. Without it, like, none of it works. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see which way he takes it.
Right, that even during the course of that interview, he tells Craig how even Newton himself didn't consider it to be an actual force.
No, a literal force. No, he used the word literal. So all you got to do is just replay his show with Mr. Musser and say, why didn't you challenge him as you're challenging me now? All you got to do is say what Musser told him, and he's stuck because he never challenged Musser with it.
I don't think he understood it. I think that Musser was doing the extremely polite thing, so it sounds like he's agreeing with him. But Craig didn't listen to what was actually being said, and he I think he still thinks to this day. Well, I know he still thinks to this day that Musser agrees with him, and all of current science agrees with him. But the guy's delusional. I don't know how he can think that when literally there is nobody out there in current physics that thinks gravity is a force.
No, I agree, Tony. You're absolutely right. All I'm saying is, as a strategy, if all you did was watch that old show and say everything Musser said, he can't say anything to you because he didn't say anything to Musser.
Oh.
But what did Musser actually tell him? He told him that gravity's not a force. But then he told him that if he chose to reify said mathematics, he could, if he wanted to. You can think of it as a force. Well, that's telling him you can reify this mathematics if you want to.
But he also said that Newton didn't himself believe it was a literal force. So now Musser knows what Newton meant by it.
Good morning. Sorry for that interruption.
No matter what you think gravity may or may not be, the more you talk about it, the more people think it exists, the more it reifies it into existence. Like talking about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer's diet for his Christmas Eve. The more you talk about it, and if you start arguing about what his diet is, and then you argue why it's nutritionally wrong that he gets the food that's claimed and all this nonsense, you're still reifying the concept of gravitation in the same way that you're reifying Rudolph's pre-Christmas Eve antics. No, it doesn't make it true.
Just
That's
1 sec.
the overall position.
Gotcha, good. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, how can I find that video between Spurs and that PhD?
Well, the annotated version's on my channel. It's one of my most recent updates. Alternatively, you can go to Fight the Flat Earth. I think it's his most recent one. There's 2.
Go to Spurser's channel. He's got it up nicer. He's just got the part that's between him and that guy.
Oh, hold on. From the chat, Brian's Logic's just told me that he actually took part in that show. Now, I didn't know that because I only watched the bit with Spurs. I'm really sorry, Brian's Logic. Feel free to join, though, and just fill us in on the details if there's something relevant because I didn't see that bit. I'm really sorry. Also, hello, Quantum Eraser. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to have you.
Hey, John. I might be wrong in saying this, but I think Fight the Flat Earth's position is that you can conflate between Einsteinian and Newtonian gravitation freely because they have the same effect. Anything that you might want to suggest, if that's his position?
Frontal lobotomy.
Let's remove the brain through the neck cavity and out the arse. That would be a much more interesting way of doing it.
Or highlight the differences between the two. For example, Newtonian gravity is a force, and Einsteinian gravity is not a force. You could just highlight that.
Just ask them to scientifically validate either if you want to have some fun.
Yeah, because he says he's got scientific experiments that validate Einsteinian gravitation, and I'm like, oh, really? I'll have to brush up on my scientific method there, Fight the Flat Earth. I've not heard a baller say the word experiment for a while. Let's see what you got, buddy.
Oh, excellent. So the first question you need to ask is, what was the observed phenomena?
Yeah. Lights going past in the sky, I guess, maybe, or...
Maybe light in a LIGO machine or something like that. Who knows? What they think is natural is often something man-made.
God knows. But 9 o'clock British summertime on my channel. It's going to be interesting because there's been a bit... Obviously, it was 12 months ago or whatever it was now. And I'm looking forward to catching up with Craig because, well, he doesn't like being told that his favourite topic doesn't exist.
On that very subject... Also, be here or be sphere on the Quantum Eraser YouTube channel. So that's 1 p.m. Central Standard, 7 p.m. UK time tonight. And we will be discussing precisely that. The difference between something that can be validated with science, that would be a naturally occurring phenomena, versus the synthetic, aka man-made. So be here or be sphere, that's Quantum Eraser YouTube channel, 7 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. Central Standard.
Thank you.
You're very welcome,
very well.
Quantum Eraser. Very welcome indeed. Did you see that you made it onto a almost million subscribed channel today?
No.
Yeah, so you feature in the Thunderf00t video.
Really?
You do.
I must have skipped that part because I thumbed through it. I didn't see myself in there.
Yeah, that's you point out that we've been asking for them to demonstrate the container without any containment.
Huh.
You have to listen.
That was
again.
really nice of him. Can I thank him?
Yeah, just watch his adverts.
Oh boy. Okay.
Any other comments on the Thunderf00t video?
From me?
Yeah. Why not?
He's Thunderf00t. Take your average baller here, and then have them sniff a boatload of glue, and that's what you get with Thunderf00t. That boy is friggin' moron. Fur. He's not even your average baller here.
I don't even know what he is. I was shocked by the level of his argumentation. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like 2015
really?
stuff.
He's that bad? I gotta watch.
He's worse.
I gotta go see this guy now.
What did you think about his statement that the Boltzmann formula was the most important thing in science?
The bolt. I must have skipped over that part. What was that in? I was dumbfounded with the Helios reference. We'll get back to yours, but where was he going with this Helios thing?
Oh, he was giving me a useful segue to show what helium does when he decided to describe gas that has no intermolecular bonds as being like a solid, completely bonded, in the form of a bouncy ball. So I just took that helium example and showed what helium actually does. That would be expands rapidly in all directions to fill the available volume. Also goes up in defiance of his 105-year out-of-date rhetoric about gravity being some sort of force.
Jeez.
I did like the power lines blowing to smithereens the helium balloons. That was great. Did you see? Excuse me. Did you see Jose turn up on the show last night, Nathan? It seems to have been triggered by when I said that ballers can't go onto Nathan's because they die very quickly when they do, and Jose joined to say I can't go on Nathan's because I'm blocked, which obviously then says like, well, why was that, Jose? Because I just went on to do this and that, basically because he was being an idiot. I can't remember the exact reason, but Jose got blocked for being an idiot. And he joined to say that he can't go onto Nathan's because...
I know why. I know why. Because I blocked him. You want to know why? Because he surreptitiously taped on Betty's server without telling the people in the server that he was taping, you slime ball. That's why.
And then it's worse than that. He actually, when asked, declared that he was not recording, so he also lied about it. Just for the audience's benefit, I have no control over the server. So it's not my server. I'm very graciously given the use of the Flat Earth Science versus Pseudoscience Discord server, which is Betty's server. And she very kindly lets me use it. I have no experience with Discord. I don't know how to use it, and it's completely managed for me. Now, Quantum Eraser, as much as he probably doesn't like me pointing this out, it's not his server either. But then again, he's got a very good relationship with Betty, so therefore he can ban people on occasion, having checked with the boss, which is Betty.
Right to hand. Why are you banned, you slime bag yourself? Well, you insulted a certain woman. That's why. And you know why. Right? If you were here, I'd reach down your throat and rip your fucking lungs out. You got that done.
No swearing, please.
Don't even mention his name. Don't mention his name.
Clown.
Sorry, don't mention Right the Hand's name. Why would you say that?
Yeah. Because he's a troll, isn't he? And he just likes his name being mentioned. That's why he does it. So just don't mention his name.
I see. Oh, fair enough. I don't care. Like I say, I wouldn't have him banned. I wouldn't have probably anybody banned if it was my server. It'd be like the chat, the total pits. But Betty knows better than I do. So there we go.
He's a real sewer rat. Of course, they all are. Most are retarded sewer rats, but everyone knows this. I'm not telling anyone anything they don't know.
Yeah, often we're dealing with liars, like overt liars. Like we'll actually ask them directly. For example, with Jose, are you recording this, Jose? Only so you can go away and say, ha, I caught you out with blah blah blah. No, I'm not recording actually. Total lie. Just dealing with scum, liars. But what's more fun than dealing with the people who are actually part of the community, like Jose or Rumpus or Zanuck or any of the other overt liars that we have to deal with on an almost daily basis, we're now getting some engagement from people who are perhaps a little less savvy in the argument. Don't appreciate that we've actually got this all wrapped up now. We've debunked the R. The only thing you had, the assumption of an R value, we've debunked that. So the argument's over. It's completely untenable as a model. Heliocentrism's dead. But we're getting people like that involved now, like Thunderf00t. It's really good. As opposed to the complete clowns that we have to deal with normally.
This was a rap 4 years ago. Now we're just laughing at them.
Yeah, exactly. Now
it's
we're just
hilarious
laughing.
Because the best of them has conceded that this nonsensical geometric horizon, aka Earth curve, only exists in the math. So where do the others have to go now? If the best has already conceded, and when I say the best, I mean, I say it loosely, but even he's conceded that it's only in the math. So where do they go from here?
Oh, it's depression.
I'm sorry,
and then
who's the
acceptance.
best? I didn't get a name.
We do. we do.
Oh, shit.
The best of them, and I say.
Oh, the best of. I got you.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Well, do you not all see a changing of the guard here? They have run their course. They've lost every argument, and there'll be a whole new crop coming up. And Rumpus wants to be relevant, so he keeps popping in and out just to stay relevant. But he's done. He's lost every argument. He says he's never been wrong, and all we've asked him is to show Earth curve, and all he does is back our our statement from the beginning. It's perspective. Everything you see is optical. Everything that changes one day from another is based on atmo and what's happening in the air, with the water being cold or hot, or the air being cold and hot. And we can prove this left and right. And so all they've done is they've hijacked perspective and called it Earth curve. And we said, wait a minute, aren't you supposed to have a geometric edge? That should be your Earth curve, and it should be no more than 1.23 miles at a 1 foot observer height. Yeah, but you can't see it. So no Earth curve then.
Can't measure
so
it.
They've lost.
Can't measure it, can't see it, only exists in maths. But should you try and measure it like Al-Biruni did, you can get within 5% of a position that can't be measured, cannot be seen, and only exists in maths, don't you know?
And then we get told, well, at best, what you've done is disprove the radius. Oh, well, thank you. We appreciate that. Yeah. Thanks for catching up.
Yeah, but
Al-Biruni.
The worst thing was, though, he even backed down on those words afterwards, saying that he never said them. But yet, when presented with the video of him actually saying those words, he still denies that he said them. I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't deny it when you're on camera saying it, but he just pretends he didn't say it. It's like
saying it.
Yeah.
Nobody on this side calls him out for it.
Sleepy Warrior did a whole video series. He needed more clown music, but basically he denied even saying that. He even put a challenge up that basically asserted, like a bet, you won't be able to prove I've said those words, and then Anthony just played them. And he still denied it. It was unreal.
Yeah.
Wow.
I ignored him ever since that. I was like, Jesus Christ, you guys can say or do anything you want and then just change it as though it never happened and expect that people will just accept that it didn't happen because you said it didn't happen, even though you're on camera. It's like Hillbilly Blue Balls with the gas pressure without a container video title, but he uses a pipe to get the container pressure. He doesn't seem to see it, and none of the ballers seem to call him out on it. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I don't know how people get away with this on their side. They're just completely and utterly dishonest.
Yeah, same with people like Prof. Phil Bell, who would laugh along while they all do the usual routine of claiming that we're idiots because we say things like water vapour's a gas, and they laugh their heads off. What idiot flat earthers? They think water vapour's a gas. Yeah, it is. But a professor who works in hydrology, I kid you not, will laugh and say, and I quote, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard," in agreement to idiots claiming that water vapour is not a gas. Professor of hydrology, kid you not.
He claimed he never said that.
That was my point. Sorry, good job you said that. I forgot my point. He also denied that he said that.
Jesus, man.
Nathan, I was over talking to you there, and I apologize for that. But what I wanted to say was Al-Biruni back then got within 5%. And today, with all the technology and the instrumentation that they brag about, they can't even see it.
Yeah, we've gone from Al-Biruni being able to measure it to the modern situation where they declare that with a hand wave, we can't see a geometric horizon. Well, why would they say that? Well, because we've debunked it. We've demonstrated beyond all certitude that it can't be geometric, physical, and an Earth curve edge. So therefore, they tell us we can't see the geometric horizon. It only exists in the maths. Well, didn't it used to block boats and buildings?
Yeah.
Greetings from Los Angeles, boys, says Retro Bill. Thank you very much for the super chat, Retro Bill.
Greetings, sir.
It used to in the pre-Black Swan era.
What, pre-2020?
Yep. That's when it used to, or that's when they were able to say it, but they can't even say it now. It's hilarious.
Now we get things like, who on earth would make the statement that if the Earth was a sphere with a radius of 3959, then every distance to horizon measurement must be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet? Who on earth would make such a straw man statement? That would be your claim that Earth's a sphere with geometry? You complete morons. They think that's a straw man now. They think their own claim is a straw man. That's how stupid the people we deal with are.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those very limits are what they used to tell us we're blocking boats. So, yeah, you guys used to make that freaking statement. You guys retarded, man.
Haven't we confirmed that the Earth curve calculators use that formula?
Oh, yes, they definitely. It's basic standard geometry. Just utilization of a presupposed R value and an assertion inside elevation, otherwise known as Muppet vision, fondly by us, or orthographic view to be accurate, removes all aspects of perspective by placing you in the side of the frame. So you're on the left-hand side of the frame, the target's on the right-hand side of the frame, and you draw a line between you, seeing the side of your own head, and the target, which won't change its size regardless of distance. So in the Earth curve maths, a 10-foot wall is a 10-foot wall even if it's a million miles away. And the only thing that's ever going to get that 10-foot wall to disappear is Earth curve. And they'll ask you how many feet and inches are missing from the 10-foot wall because Earth curve's got in the way. They just ignore the fact that the angular size of that 10-foot wall will decrease with distance. But they take that effect and call it Earth curve by showing you the side of your own head, even though you don't have that in the picture that you're going to be analysing with this curve maths that hijacks perspective.
Yeah, that's true. But my angle is that they're saying, where'd you ever get that number? And yet that's the very number they use in their Earth curve calculator. So it's like, wait a minute, why are you asking me where I got the number when it's within your math already?
Yeah. They're so stupid that they say, well, you need to prove the pre-statement. It's like, no, the modus tollens argument takes your claim, that would be the p-statement, and debunks it by demonstrating beyond all certitude that you can't have a physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon. And their response is to say, you need to prove the statement if the Earth is a sphere with a radius 3959. It's like, no, that's your claim. You complete idiots. Well, they just deny it and call it a straw man now because we've debunked it.
Exactly.
So I'll do one last shout out to DJ Neo Shaman. Hashtag Black Swan for the win. Excellent work, gentlemen. Thank you for your tenacity, focus, and perseverance. Thank you very much indeed, Neo Shaman, for your super chat. If you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley or Nathan Oakley 1980 premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you're watching this live on Nathan Oakley 1980, this is where we bid you farewell. A massive, huge, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
I just felt like doing that.
Come on, Ren. Let me hear it.
Shut up. Shut up, 10th man. It's a gradient, you idiot.
Don't forget imbecile.
Ren and Stimpy, isn't it?
Yes.
Stimpy,
it's also,
idiot.
It's also Peter Lorre.
Idiot.
It's also Peter Lorre, the character actor.
I gotta say one more time that my favorite part of the Spurs and the PhD. So at one point, the PhD says, Spurs is asking him what the cause was, right? And he says very angrily, like, the cause was the masses that I buried in the ground. So Spurs says, so the masses that you buried in the ground caused the phenomenon we see in nature? And he's like, no.
That was funny. And then I sent my students
I was dying because it reminded me, I don't know if you guys ever see Happy Gilmore, when he's battling with that guy, Shooter McGowan, and he's like, I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast. You eat pieces of shit for breakfast? No.
No, but then he said later, right in the same, I think, sentence, or right after, and then after I bury it, I send my students with the instruments to find it.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, you caused the whole thing, and you gave your students instruments that could vary density underground?
Yes, he did! Respect his authority!
That's how he sounded, man. It was so bad. Like, wow, you just made your little profession look real silly. Almost that. It's bad. Like when he got really upset when Spurs said, "I would like to talk about science." And he said,
I would
"I
like
can't
to know why
believe you're
QE
saying
was
that,
off
you
the radar.
buffoon."
Go on, Neil.
Like,
How come quantum eraser didn't get acknowledged for coming up with the scientific method? He only gave credit to you and Sleeper Warrior.
Yeah, it's a bloody outrage. At least claim that quantum eraser's the overall arbiter of the scientific method, not me and Sleeping Warrior, for God's sake. Yeah, apparently me and Sleeping Warrior, we're the men. When it comes to the scientific method, it's basically ours, according to this PhD pseudoscientist who doesn't adhere to the method. Therefore, it's just some flat earthers method that's advanced humanity through all these years.
funny that PhD would have the names of Nathan Oakley and Sleeping Warrior on their brains.
Chocolate, you're talking all over Neil.
Oh, I'm sorry, Neil.
I said I don't know what I was expecting. He's putting the wrong pseudoscience. So why was I going to think he would get it right with you guys?
Hold on, guys.
Hey, Brian, by the way.
At the 10:45.
Every time. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Nathan, I'm in a noisy place, so I can't talk. So I just listen in, okay?
No worries. I'll do what everyone does to me. So how did you get on Fight the Flat Earth, then? I'll just ask you a string of questions. No, I'm only kidding. I'll come back to you.
Well, it's your show, so the background noise will be on that.
May I continue?
Yes, go ahead, 10th man.
At the 10:30 mark of the video, the one that Spurs put out, he says Nathan Oakley and Sleeping Warrior. At the 10:45 mark, he says about credentials, meaning his own. I'm the only one with the academic qualification, peer-reviewed journals, authority you do not have, Spurs.
So sad.
These people are running scared. They're so used to having people just accept what they say because they call themselves scientists and hold up their PhDs. And then now, 2020, flat earthers are humiliating them and exposing them as the pseudoscientists that they actually are. And that's infuriating if you're used to the power that is asserted and acquired when you use the word science. But it just takes a few flat earthers to point out what science actually is, and you're screaming, respect my authority.
May I comment on that from a side?
Yeah, go ahead.
Not all flat earthers, just flat earthers who know the arguments, know what science is, and know how to debate because they've been on your platform watching the trolls do everything they can to obfuscate, doublespeak. And we've learned in the trenches. So it's like, bring it. It's just so exciting for me to talk about the subject now after being schooled here for a couple of years or whatever length it's been. It's like, I've heard everything. Everyone on their side has shot all their ammo. Just bring it. I'm ready for you.
Did you hear Spurs qualified the name of his channel when he was last on?
No.
He basically said, under no pressure is how flat earthers should feel. We have the winning arguments. We're not going to have a new, out of the blue, golden bullet from the globe side. We've already demolished it. So we're under no pressure. And that's exactly how Spurs held himself when he was dealing with a totally out of the blue PhD, and a very angry one at that, who's basically been held to task by a flat earther who just knew what the scientific method was. As we all do. We were all taught it.
How about gas behavior?
Just describe it as a solid. Just do a Thunderf00t and just bring out the bouncy balls.
Hey, I want to talk about the peer review process. When people start throwing out the peer review process, if you just do a quick Google search, say problem with peer review journals, here's the headlines that pop up right off the bat. The mess that is the peer review and what science should be done about it. Peer review, flawed process at the heart of science and journals. Science is suffering because peer review has big problems. There's big problems. Peer review, the worst way to judge research except all others. Those are when they start bringing up peer review process, I just start throwing.
Thanks. Does anybody know the actual process, if you were employing science, that would be done to validate something? As opposed to peer review?
Scientific method? Experiment?
Experiment.
You'd repeat it.
Precisely. Systematic experimentation.
Isn't the problem with with peer reviews that they're not really that critical, from what I understand?
It's just
like
not
a big
science.
problem.
If your claim is a scientific claim, then the paper will say this causes that. That's what the paper will say, in essence. And if you're going to validate that, the way to validate it is to repeat the experiment. That would be to follow the process of systematic experimentation. Follow in the footsteps and repeat the process. I vary and manipulate the assumed cause and see if it does indeed cause the effect. That would be a satisfactory scientific review. Peer review isn't that.
Okay.
If you read the articles,
sorry about this.
Sorry. If you go through and just kind of read the articles overall, there's usually bias, money, that people aren't really doing the process itself because there's been people that's published peer review process and it's gone through the peer review process and they were junk research and they passed the process. So they're not actually even repeating anything that's occurring in the peer review process. So nothing's being repeated. I mean, but every article talks about it along the same line. It's money, bias, and no one's actually doing the research to see if they're getting the same results.
Well, you gotta pass the bill and then read it, according to the politicians.
Often these researchers are being funded by the same groups, right? So they're not gonna go against one paper that's being funded by the same people they're being funded by. So all you got to do is follow the money, and it's usually coming from, relatively a small amount of sources, and you don't want to piss them off. You want to give them something. So often they're pushing through peer review to impress the funding, so they'll get more funding for their next project. That's all it's about.
The
basis for scientism, at least, from what I understand.
Say that one more time. I talked over the top of it.
I said it sounds like the basis for scientism as we know it.
I don't know about scientism. It's pseudoscience. It's clearly defined. If you make a claim and say it's science and you haven't gone through the scientific method, it is ipso facto, by definition, pseudoscience.
Pseudoscientism. I don't know.
If you like. I know what you mean. There's a collective group of people, therefore, if you put an ism on the end, then you bundle them all together. But all we're talking about is people who've recognised the power that is offered by an empirical method. That would be the scientific method. Now, if you're all trained, as we are in the Western world, how the scientific method works and how it offers empirical evidence, and you don't have that, it's really useful to just say you've got it. And most of the time, people will go along with it. And that's wonderful while it lasts, until a flat earther like Spurs comes along and says, let's see your actual science, and then you're told to be respectful of their PhD and their peer review process and their non-adherence to science. And that's qualified. That's got a definition. That's pseudo-science.
Isn't it interesting in the year 2020 that flat earthers are holding fast and hard and not bastardizing the scientific method, and the ballers are?
Yep. 2014, the whole body of science proves we're on a sphere. 2020, we don't have a geometric horizon. You can't see it, you can't measure it, it only exists in the maths. The whole body of science proves the globe. We can't see Earth curve in the geometric horizon. That's where we've come from, and that's where we are now.
And don't forget, science doesn't prove things.
Yeah, also, if you're a pseudoscientist, pretender clown muppet who doesn't have any actual science, you're going to make statements like chocolate's just made. Do you want to repeat it?
Science doesn't prove anything.
Yeah, pseudoscience, which is what they actually have, doesn't prove anything. They call it science, and when it's proved to not prove anything, by us, the flat earthers, they say science doesn't prove anything. Yeah, it does. It empirically validates cause if you have the supposition correct.
Well, if science doesn't prove things, why do they have peer review?
Science does prove things.
Because I remember being told numerous times, we have all this science that proves the globe. What happened, guys?
They still think they've got it. So you put to task someone like Thunderf00t and say, where's your science? Where's your scientific evidence of gravity, for example? And they'll tell you what they've seen through a telescope.
What?
The reification fallacy that is gravity. They'll tell you what they've seen through their telescope.
Well, telescope, therefore science.
I saw it on the telly.
Outrageous.
When you're looking through a telescope, the science is done in your eye. That's the new thing.
Yeah. People like Thunderf00t think that performing astronomy is science. He even said it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to need a viable hypothesis for your observation of Jupiter making a full rotation. Rotation? That sounds quite assumptive. Nevertheless, we're going to need a valid hypothesis with an alternative and a null. And then we're going to need to see the systematic experimentation that was done to validate that which you observed in nature as a phenomenon. This Jupiter light in the sky. Oh, what's that you say? None of that's been done, but you say it's a ball of gas in a sky vacuum in violation of natural law. No, mate, that's just your adherence to your own fundamentalist religious zealotry and utilisation of said fundamentalist religious zealotry to prove your fundamentalist religious zealotry. Otherwise known as begging the question. They're clowns. They don't even know they're doing it.
I think chocolate's onto something. Now I know why they have such a highbrow attitude. They've done science through the eye.
Shout out to Slick James Johnson. Observe and declare. That's what they think science is. Look through your little lens at a light in the sky and then tell the world what it is. But ultimately make sure they know you're a scientist first, because then they'll think your declarations are empirical. Even though you haven't actually got any science, you're saying it's science, and by definition that makes your claim one of pseudoscience? We'll be here to highlight that daily.
All the while telling us that the observations that we're doing are not science and can't prove anything.
That'd be a fair statement. They're not.
I agree, but they're double speaking. They're saying what they're observing is science. What everyone else is observing is something else. Anything but science. Strange.
Yeah, double standards.
But why would they declare it science if they themselves declare science as approved things? What are they need science for?
True doublespeak. They're double speaking on their doublespeak.
I explained it earlier. You need to assert something as having empiricism. Then you use the word science. We're all trained to know what the scientific method is because we were taught it at school. So you say, well, I've got a hypothesis. This is science. Look at Jupiter. I've looked at it. Science. People go, oh, right. So what you declare about it must be true then. And then when you go, no, that's actually a pseudoscience claim if you haven't gone through the scientific method with this. They go, well, science doesn't actually prove anything. It's wondrous. It's beautiful because we don't know. That's a reference to Dr. Becky, who also is a complete clown and believes that science is wondrous because you don't know, even though the very method and its process enables you to empirically validate cause. It proves or disproves a hypothesis. If it didn't, nobody would do it. Now, it does definitely prove or disprove hypotheses. That's what science does. And because it does that, empirically, it's advanced humanity. But Becky thinks it's wondrous because we don't know. And that's only because she's a pseudoscience astronomer and she doesn't have any adherence to the scientific method. But whilst typing on a little computer, says she's doing science. She's not. we're surrounded by pretender clown pseudoscientists, and they're all being held to task by us, the flat earthers. It's a great time.
Do you remember the meme I sent you?
My bad, Tom.
Do you remember Neil deGrasse Tyson with his picture and then the words, quote unquote, when different experiments give you the same result, it is no longer subject to your opinion. That's the good thing about science. It's true whether or not you believe in it. That's why it works, Neil deGrasse Tyson. The only problem is they don't stick to the method.
Right. Yeah, Thunderf00t made a stupid assertion again when, I can't remember, I think he was describing the spectroscopy of the sun, the claim that it's helium named after Helios. I think Quantum Eraser wanted to make a note on this. But he declared that it was a scientific debate. Oh my God. How to declare openly and boldly that you haven't got a clue what science is. Declare that science is somehow debatable when it's an empirical method of validating cause. No, definitely not up for debate if you've got actual science. But your little lie in the sky you can debate about, can't you? That's because it isn't science.
I want to give a shout out to Wakey also with that interview that he had with that exoplanet astrophysicist. I think her name was Svetlana or something. I don't remember her last name, but yeah, another beautiful display of a PhD or an astrophysicist, somebody with accreditation to their name, who catches feelings because they can't answer questions from a flat earther. So, yeah, definitely Wakey gets a shout out for that. If you haven't seen that, you should check it out.
But before she found out he was a flat earther, she was more than content to explain that if the model, that would be the heliocentric model, not where we live, just a reification, a philosophy, a way of looking at life. If the heliocentric globe Earth model is wrong, as demonstrated and described by Wakey, then it's just a matter of changing it. It's just that simple.
Yep. Yeah, when he asked her, why is it that, I think it was the moon? Why does the moon appear to be to somebody in Florida, Australia, or something like that at the same time, and that shouldn't happen on the model? She was like, very simply, oh, well, then the model's wrong. Oh, okay. Thanks.
And Chocolate,
very convenient.
Would you give us Mr. Sensible's best statement?
What, at best?
Yes.
Oh, at best, all you've done here is disprove the radius.
Let's change the model.
AKA,
what's also telling,
what you've done is prove us wrong. Thanks, Mr. Sensible. Appreciate that.
What's also telling is when they have those conversations with PhDs or, scientists over the phone or in person or on the internet, when they don't know they're talking to a flat earther, they're cordial. They'll answer questions and they'll just act like they know all the answers and they know they're above that person. But as soon as they find out they're doing it for a flat earth narrative, the whole attitude changes, right? I mean, that is telling to me.
Yeah, that was what was most telling, because in the beginning of the interview, there were questions she couldn't answer. Like, she even told him a couple times, I guess we could Google it, it's okay. Had no problem conceding that there were things about the model she did not understand. But towards the end of the interview, when the questions started getting harder and she could see, I guess she could put one and one together and say, oh, wait a minute, this guy's asking me about curvature and things that absolutely disprove the model. All of a sudden she gets upset and starts saying things like, oh, I should have checked your credentials before having this interview. Getting upset. Oh, it was beautiful. If you haven't seen that, anybody listen. If you haven't seen that, you got to see it. Wakey.
When they get mad, it should be easier for them after that, right? If they think they're talking to somebody so dumb that's a flat earther, why would it be a struggle? Why would they get frustrated?
Exactly.
It should be easy.
And he says to her, he says, well, why are you getting upset? I don't understand. I'm asking questions, and you, as a scientist, you should be more than willing to answer questions and talk about this, especially if we're finding problems in the model. She's like, no, I should have checked your credentials, and we shouldn't even be talking. And she got absolutely pissed off. It's wonderful.
We give credentials and praise to people who can follow directions and regurgitate things on test and get the right answer that's provided for them in a formula, right? We don't praise the free thinkers or the people who think outside the box anymore. We actually ridicule that person. And that's the opposite of science.
Yeah.
Right?
Man,
Science is thinking outside the box, going against the norm, seeing if something can be different or another effect can be found. I mean, man, we have gotten so far away from science that the real true scientists that are trying to come up, not the person who has the degree, but the person who is actually trying to do science and put things through the scientific method, that particular person is being ridiculed. That's a sad state of affairs.
Yep.
Hey,
That's
Chocolate,
exactly
can somebody post a link to that? I'd love to.
But yeah, absolutely correct, Dave.
Were you in Discord?
If the assumption is that you're basically only asking because you want to gain a better knowledge about their understanding of their religious viewpoint about a heliocentric model, then they're more than willing to tell you, oh yeah, well, it's got a few problems here and there, because at that point, this particular example with Wakey Wakey, she's under the apprehension he wants to know more about her religion. So she's more than willing, as soon as she finds out that he doesn't actually share the same religious viewpoint, because it doesn't have any scientific validity, she suddenly doesn't like him. Oh, well, I should have checked that you were actually only asking because you were going to agree with me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's us as well, that she did that.
But doesn't science also, don't they
became
say
a waste of our time.
things have to be falsified? And to find something to be falsified, you have to question the current position.
No.
So if okay,
it has to be falsifiable.
Yeah, it's too broad.
Falsifiable.
Having a null makes your hypothesis falsifiable, which is to say that your default position, and I'll clarify, you don't test the null, but your default position is that if A, not B. In other words, the null is to say that I've guessed wrong. My presumed cause won't cause the effect. So to put this into an actual example, you see a boiling hot spring and go, I wonder what causes that. So you get some water and you go, I think that it's going to be this acid. If I add the acid, it'll make the water boil. So your supposition is if A, acid, then B, boiling water. But the standard default position is if A, acid, not B, not boiling water. So then what do you do to validate your supposition? Well, you go forth and experiment. You actualize your hypothesis. Put the hypothesis to test. So you add acid to water and observe the effect, if it occurs at all. So you add your acid and it doesn't boil. So you validate your null. You invalidate your alternative. Well, that process of having a null and an alternative is what offers the empiricism. That's what gives you falsifiability. But we get idiots who don't know what science is, who think that taking a photograph of something suddenly has scientific validity if you can do it more than once. It's like, no. You've taken an aspect of the scientific method, the falsifiability aspect, that offers empiricism upon actualization of hypotheses, and suddenly applied it to some random nonsense like taking pictures.
Don't miss what I'm asking. I've actually heard the ballers say that you should be trying to disprove your theory, or whatever that thing may be. So even a scientist, he has a theory, he should be just trying himself to disprove that theory.
How to get the theory?
No.
Well,
right.
I know what you're.
That's absurd.
Theory, but you don't,
that's
absolutely
absurd.
I'm just regurgitating what they've been saying. What I've heard.
Sure. Let me just pull it apart though. That's absurd. You're trying to prove that you've guessed correctly. I guessed that acid would cause the water to boil. Well, I want that to be proven true. Now, your default position for the empirical nature of the result is that you will also have a null to say that you won't get it right. And at the end of the systematic experimentation, one of those will be found to be correct, one will be disregarded. So if you guess correct, you go, maybe heat causes this. If A, heat, then B, boiling water. The null, if heat, not boiling water. Well, at the end of adding heat to water and watching it boil, you automatically disprove your null. You can get rid of it. It doesn't apply. It can't apply. But therefore, you validate the thing you're trying to prove, which would be your supposition, the hypothesis, the alternative is what you're actually doing to try and prove you've got it right. You don't test the null.
Kiri, while you're here, based on what Nathan just said, with what Paul was stating, the ballers say, how many times does a person who follows the scientific method get their hypothesis right on the first manipulation of the independent variable?
Oh, I wouldn't have no idea. It'd be subject specific. I mean, after you're in the subject for a while, then your educated guesses on what the independent variable is or the cause for the effect gets much better, right? Now, first stepping into a subject, you're going to screw up like all the time. But remember, even if you do screw up, you've proven something, the null. So that's one less thing.
Well, this is where I'm going. This is where I'm going with it. I wanted to start with you that basic, and that was an excellent summary there. So all these people who claim that science proves something, and when we say, like Spurs did to this guy who's the PhD, can I see it? Can I see the experiment? Can I see your independent variable? Can I see your findings? Provide the paperwork. Provide all the nulls. Provide the one that wasn't a null that proved your hypothesis. Where is this? Shouldn't they have a bunch of recorded, like I did it this way? I tried to boil water. It's at sea level at 100 degrees. It didn't boil. So I raised the heat to 150. It didn't boil. Well, there's two nulls right there. And then finally it gets to 212 and it boils. So there's your heat. Now it's working at 212.
Well, if science doesn't even prove anything, then why is the guy getting so upset that Spurs is asking him about his scientific method?
It's not here.
What's all the emotion about if science doesn't prove anything, guys?
I can answer that as well.
I don't get it.
I can answer
It
that.
means it's okay. They don't need it anymore because they can do their thing now, according to them.
This guy didn't know McToon's statement on Scientism proof things. He thought because he was the only PhD on the panel that day who had the credentials, qualification, that his version of science did prove things. But after Spurs got through with him, he couldn't even prove that.
Sorry, can you just answer Chocolate's
Big
question?
John.
Sorry, just 1 second. Can you ask your question again, please, Chocolate? What's to get
said if I'm trying to understand why, if science doesn't prove anything, why was this PhD that Spurs debated with, why was he so upset when asked about his scientific method?
Because the reality is he doesn't actually have any science. He has pseudoscience and asserts it as science. And upon being asked to actually validate any hypothesis, which he hasn't got, it exposes something that formerly he used to have power. He could express his authority and just tell you what was what, and you would accept it. Until you ask him for actual science. That's what's to get upset about. You lose your power of authority when you're exposed as a pseudo-scientist, which he is, and Spurs exposed him as it.
So then instead of presenting your science and absolutely shutting that down, instead you assert your power that you just lost. It's great.
Exactly. Attack is the best form of defense. That's what he did.
Yep. Someone shouts
John.
out. Go on, Sleeping Warrior, sorry.
John, are you there?
Yes.
Big G, the gravitational constant. It's such a minute. They say it's a force, right? And I don't want to go into the forcey bit, but why do they think it exists if it's so small to measure that they struggle measuring it? Why do they think it exists, and what was the reason for it existing in the first place? Like, what's the story behind Big G?
Why do they think it exists? I can't answer why questions of complete lunatics.
I could.
Oh, let Arwen.
They needed it.
Oh, don't we need Arwen? This is where Arwen's going to shine.
Very
Let him
short.
shine.
They needed it to explain why that presupposed ball of the moon was spinning around the Earth to begin with, and the sun. So they needed this orbit concept, and that came out of gravitation. Big G. With their mind experiments.
You'd have to go and ask CV boys, but I think you're going to need really strong smelling salts and a big friggin' heater.
So the Big G, the gravitational constant, right? They use a variety of things, and they claim that it's like such a microscopically small, ridiculously small force, but they demand that it's there, right? So regardless of whether CV boys added it to Newton's maths or not, they still believe that this thing's there, and there's papers that are still coming out on it even now. I don't know if you've seen McToons.net website where he gives all these measurements of it. Have you seen it?
McToon? No, I don't follow McToon. Sorry.
No, neither do I. But McToon.net/G, little g, brings up all these so-called gravity experiments. It's a massive list, and it's really impressive. Yeah, somebody's actually put...
Oh, this should be good for a laugh. Great. Let's hear him.
It is.
Well,
so boom experiments, are they?
He says this is what I'll do is if I screen share, that'll be easier because you can see it and then you can familiarize yourself.
Oh, brilliant.
With it.
This is going to be great. Oh, this is going to make my day, Anthony.
Yeah. Share screen.
Right, while Anthony's doing that, let's rip to shreds a few pseudoscience claims. Awesome way to round out the show.
Might take longer than you expect though, Nathan, but we've got all day. Right, so you see my screen now, yeah?
Sleeping Warrior. Yeah, here we go. Gravity experiments. Excellent.
So this is McToon.net/G, right? This is a list of gravitational experiments confirming gravity. This is a small sampling. I selected ones where the full publication was available for free. So I'll just show you the size of the citation for just first. I mean, I would say there's more than just a couple there. I wouldn't say comprehensive, but it's definitely more than nothing, right? And I'll just pick one randomly.
No, it's real close to nothing because there's no experiments in there, and all I got to say is helium balloon.
Yeah, the measurement of the Newtonian constant of gravitation, G, published in 2014. The torsion bar is in a vacuum chamber, tested and controlled for magnetic susceptibility, copper tellurium alloy masses. And then, here's the direct
Hold on, stop.
PDF.
You don't need to download it. So you already know the answer to all of these, Anthony. I know you're looking for the back and forth, but this is obviously just Cavendish done in a vacuum. Well, Cavendish has no observed phenomena, and the claimed hypothesis is if mass, then mass attracts mass.
What I wanted to point out was that when you get any of these citations, they never ever seem to put any they never express a hypothesis. They never talk about the independent or dependent variable. They simply measure something and they claim that it's consistent with all the other things. They never ever talk about scientific method. Is it because they can't talk about it because they know it doesn't comply? Or is it because they're slack? Or is it because of some other reason? But they never talk about it. What's going on?
Well, they've got the title with the word experiment in it. That's good enough. The fact that a pseudoscientist has utilised this magic trick and substituted his just-so-story and mathematics based on a contraption as opposed to a phenomena and said that it's science with the word experiment, that's good enough for them. We say you need an experiment. So they go, here you go, Cavendish experiment. And we go, okay, what's the observed phenomena? They go, well, gravity. And where did you observe this? Well, in the Cavendish experiment. So that's the end of that argument, right? It's a joke. There's no observed phenomena.
But even in the title of the paper is experiments to measure the density of the Earth.
Yeah,
I've never understood how they can come out with mass attracting mass as a function of that paper when it's talking about the density, and they say, well, it isn't demonstrating mass attracting mass. It's measuring the density of the Earth. Like, but where do you get the mass attracting mass bit from then? Well, that's what it shows. But it wasn't trying to demonstrate that. It was trying to demonstrate the density of the Earth, right? And it just seems to be a total conflation of the point of the density bit of the paper.
Also, this is completely out of date. This is a 105-year out of date pseudoscience. Number one, it's not an experiment. Number two, mass is undefined. We don't need to go any further, but it's been replaced. So Einsteinian pseudo-Riemannian force space, the bending of conceptual mediums known as space-time, is the current gravity. This is describing Reverend John Michel C.V. Boy's Cavendish gravity, which is no longer a force. It doesn't exist as a magic force. It's been superseded by the mathematics and abstractions of Einstein. So even if they want to claim this as an experiment, number one, it isn't. Number two, their own pseudoscience priests are telling them that this has been replaced. Gravity is not a force, and this is an experiment to show gravity as a force, according to them.
They're still on the old and busted. They need to move on to the new hotness, because the old and busted, that was old and busted in 1915. Y'all got to move on to the new hotness.
Okay. Hold on, can you guys clarify that? Hold on, can you guys clarify that one more time, because it's really important. Because Cavendish is always brought up, but they're not. They're just out of date, as like you said. They're on to Einstein now. Like, why don't they just admit Cavendish is outdated?
Because they need.
That's my point. Why are they still talking about Cavendish as though it's the current science?
Because the current science doesn't help them when it's really quick to cut it off at the knees. When you point out that it's only existing in maths, it's an abstraction. Pseudo-Riemannian space-time doesn't exist. You can't bend concepts. All those sorts of things kill it really quickly. And when you need a force anyway, and we point out that thinking of it as a force is merely a reification fallacy, they still need a force. So they fall back on 105-year out-of-date rhetoric that's apparently claiming a force when Einstein describes it not as a force. Describes.
But why do flat earthers have to remind them of that? Like, why is it the flat earther responsibility to say, hey, dude, you guys are not only a century out of date, you probably don't even know the real science that you should be engaging in. They're just, I don't know, it's just a fucking weird position to be in. Like, flat earth does not need to explain this to you.
Yeah. I share your pain, as does Quantum Eraser.
Requires that.
Yeah.
Their model requires that. When they look up G or look up gravity, what does it say? It says, "Oh, Cavendish discovered gravity with the Cavendish experiment," or nonsense like that, right? And that's what they have to go on.
Yeah, but by the same token,
hold on to it.
The guy's sentiment
It's
is
almost
to say,
like it's almost as if when Einstein said that gravity is no longer a force, it's an effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. It's almost as if they don't want that to be remembered, and they sweep it under the mat so it gets forgotten about, and they keep talking about Newtonian concepts because they want that. At least, I mean, it seems intuitive, right? And you can do tests on it because it's something that you can play with and make papers on and all that. But you can't do that with Einstein. So it's almost as if they were like, that's an inconvenient truth. Let's get rid of that, and we'll keep talking about this so everyone thinks it's this.
But the guy's
exactly.
asking,
the ultimate reflection of Cavendish is Einstein. So
respond to your comment. I've been trying for 3 straight minutes. Hello. So So you asked why we would have to tell them about which pseudoscience they should parrot, and absolutely, it's a really frustrating position to be in. So they're telling us about 105-year out-of-date pseudoscience that their own priests, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Brian Cox, George Musa, they're all telling them it's not a force. So why would we have to do that? Well, because they don't have it and they need it. So we've got to tell them about their own pseudoscience and tell them to correctly parrot their pseudoscience so we can demolish the correct parroted pseudoscience. But we've first got to demolish the 105-year out-of-date stuff to get to the point where we demolish the Einsteinian reification of his mathematics. And that's normally to demolish a claim that we can have gas pressure without a container in violation of the second law of thermodynamics by way of a force that's not a force that you can think of as force, even though it's not a force. And therefore, when pointing that out, we need to go back to the 105-year out-of-date rhetoric. That's why.
And even if it was a force, wouldn't ever stop entropy from increasing.
No.
No. I mean, it's such a small, like, it's ridiculously small. No.
Well, we have Achenvirus here. Wasn't he supposed to go ahead and prove Einstein's field equations for the tides?
I never got the book.
Can we summarize the reason you've been set to task with that, though? You may not have appreciated it at the time, but I'd love to explain why we asked you to do that.
Did you ask me a question? Can you ask that one more time? I'm sorry.
More a permission to just explain why we asked you to do that.
I'm not gonna lie. I forgot why y'all told me to do that.
That's okay. That's what I suspected. That's fine. It's not like a really blatantly obvious thing. So Einstein's field equations cannot solve for more than one mass. And the question that's been put to you is, can you solve for the moon causing the tides with gravity? That would be the moon a mass and Earth a mass in their rhetoric. So not one mass, but two masses. And that's beyond the capabilities of Einstein's field equations. That's why we asked you to try and do it, because it can't be done.
That's just a description. That's only a description. The next question that's coming at you, because Einstein's general relativity is science, we're going to ask you to show the cause and effect relationship, Ackenbars, since you're Mr. Text guy here in the chat, right? Mr. Text guy. Right? Mr. Keyboard Warrior guy. Now it's time to be a man and cowboy to fuck up. Right?
Yeehaw! Oh, shit.
Yeehaw!
Clown.
Howdy, boys.
Yeah, that's what you got.
Did you understand that? Once we see the equations fall on their ass, we're then going to try and set you to task by validating a cause and effect relationship, which is what's being asserted with the moon causing tides. That'll be a cause and effect relationship. And surprisingly, we've got this method that elucidates cause. It's called the scientific method. And we're going to want to see you vary and manipulate the moon.
All right, boys. Whenever I get a hold of that book, I'm sure gonna let you know. Woo!
And a hold of that
Virus is hilarious.
Yeah, start with the ham radio signal.
He's my favourite baller. I've got to be honest.
He's good.
We all know he's your little pet, Nathan.
Yeah, it's my fuzzy little troll. Bless him.
Virus is cool. I gotta give it to him.
No,
well, he knows when it's funny. I appreciate.
Some people are normal people. He's a normal guy. He's a baller,
Yeah,
but he's a normal
nice
guy.
Muppet, John. Come on.
He's a normal guy.
I'm a Muppet.
I wouldn't say he's a Muppet. No, he's not a Muppet.
I can already see myself in Muppet form.
Yeah, just look at the Earth curve calculator. You'll see the side of your own head.
he got that strike is funny, Bone.
Right, I think
I can see
Cowboy Muppet
form.
we've descended into the jovial ad hom, so I'm probably going to round out the show and say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both today's Discord and G Plus panels for making the after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering Streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!